It shows that it is now live.
Okay, good. All right.
You're in charge, Jamie.
All right. So we'll call the meeting to order. And I did not bring up the silly email that has the agenda on it. Why that's taking me so long to do. I don't know.
Approval of minutes is first.
There it is. All right. Oh, there they are. Cute.
Move to approve.
Second.
Everybody's read them. Everybody's good.
Aye.
All right. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I think you have to have a roll call vote.
Yeah. You got to say who you are since we're recording it.
That's correct.
Who's secretary?
Ethan.
Ethan? Want to do a roll call vote, Ethan?
Sure. Dan,
Aye.
Charlie,
Aye.
Eddie,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Susanna,
Aye.
me, I believe that's it.
You got me. Aye. Yes.
Farmer.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's fine.
All right. Next item of business is the Ronnie Tate lots 1 through 4 final plat. And Garrett, do you want to review the information and review that you've gotten to this point?
Sure. They submitted the final plat, which is in the agenda packet. The surveyor has since revised the plat and addressed all the concerns in the review. So staff recommends approval.
All right. So actually we're blasting on through this. Do we still have a member of the public that wishes to speak?
We do not.
We do not have that. Okay. So we don't have to do those comments. Does the commission have any comments in regards to staff's proposal?
I have a question. This is Charlie. Jamie, you sent out 3 plats, I think. Just curious, there was no message as to why, so I was curious why.
Because well, I guess curiosity. I didn't understand on some of the components of the plat submitted. And because I typically ask the question, have the neighboring or adjoining properties that may be impacted or affected, have they been contacted, and do they have a statement or opinion otherwise to consider? I wanted to look and see how the subdivision got to where it was, because there were some components of it that impacted that actually were represented on earlier subdivisions. So that's the reason I sent it back, in case we wanted to look at them tonight.
I don't either.
Did they have a sign out, notice of this meeting? Does anybody know?
Like a public notice sign for subdivision?
Yes.
I don't know. Do y'all do that? I guess that'd be the Boyd. Do y'all do that?
Boyd's on mute. There we go.
Not to my knowledge, for a subdivision of this nature. Garrett, do you know of a requirement for that?
No, not to my knowledge. For a rezoning, yes.
I do not.
Okay.
I think when Jamie and I looked at this today, it looks like the only direct impact of this is going to be that an adjacent property is actually gaining additional property. All the other easements and all of that, it's kind of what we were looking at. The utility easements and all that appear to exist prior to this. I don't think we noted anything that was going to be an additional impact on adjacent properties. Unless Jamie noticed something after we talked.
No, it just takes a minute to work back through it. So the signal road that ran through there was abandoned on this plat book 33-178. And that date is what, 1979. And so at that time, that sewer connection easement was shown there. The 50-foot signal road right away was abandoned. That would have split Shepherd Forest subdivision 1 and 2 from the McDade property that was subdivided into 1B and 1A. There's still they're showing this 16-foot. No, that's a different thing. So there's a water line that runs through there that's eased to the city. And then there's a 16-foot power and telephone easement that's not shown on the new plat. And that's in 79. So if you go to 87, Roger Reamer, no, if you go to 2007, plat book 87, page 176, Roger Reamer in 07 subdivided 1A and 1B into what it is now, and they were able to put that house onto 1A of the McDade property, which adjoins one of the Shepherd Forest property. Still shows the sewer connection, still shows the abandoned 50-foot, and it shows the 15-foot utility easement per deed of the water line, but it doesn't show the utility easement, the power and telephone easement, which presumably could have been moved out to the right of way now that there is one. Yeah, because that 15-foot that's on our plat is not shown in the 79 drawing, and it is shown in the 2007 drawing. So maybe that's where it went. I don't know. I guess the whole point of that is just to make sure the plat's complete with information before we sign it. I mean, it's ultimately not ours to do the title work, right? I think we've gotten into that before.
Well, ultimately, is that not the job of the town when they sign the plat? I mean, in my mind, our job is, does it meet the subregs? And it appears to me to meet the subregs, and then, all the items you just discussed are, typically administrative matters before they sign the plat.
Yeah, I think that's typical that I focus on things that aren't really my business to focus on. So, yeah, staff recommends approval. I may have a number of other comments about the layout and other potential implications, but it's just not our job to worry about, right?
Yeah, Garrett, I would ask you in your review, this plat meets all of our subregs.
It does.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Before you all take a vote, I wanted to ask, do you have,
Say again, Sam.
I'm sorry, we do have at least one representative from the applicant. I didn't know if you all, in the waiting room, I didn't know if you all wanted to hear from them.
We have a motion to approve.
Well, and we can still discuss if that gets seconded and still bring him in.
You're not trying to hold anything up. Just wanted to make sure you all were aware of that.
Well, thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second, or is there additional discussion that anyone would like to have?
I'll second the motion, and then we'll see if we can talk about it.
Okay, so it's We have a motion and a second. And now you want to see if we can talk about it. We generally move to a vote, right?
No, actually, that's when the discussion is supposed to take place, after there's a motion in a second.
All right. So the motion is to approve.
Yeah, so what were your concerns that needed to be addressed, Garrett, and how were they addressed?
I mean, they're really fairly simple. It wasn't labeled as a final plat. It needed the minimum building setback lines, which are shown. I mean, it was really just grammatical stuff that needed to be shown on there. I've asked them to show how much acreage was being transferred from lot 3, between lot 3 and 4.
Can you show me where that was done?
Pardon?
Can you show me where that was done?
That it's not the one that's in the agenda packet. It was sent afterwards. Let me grab it.
I think the one in the agenda packet has it. It says area to be transferred to lot 4.13 acres plus or minus.
Yes, and it has addresses. Yes.
Okay, all right. And that satisfied your question.
Yes. Let's see.
Anything we need to know about special about stormwater in this property? Practical implications?
Stormwater rules don't apply to 4-lot subdivision.
Is that why that property was conveyed? So in 07, that drainage is still a 16-foot utility and drainage easement at the boundary of lot 4 and 3 to the north. Is that why they threw that other plug northward to the neighbor?
Who would know the answer to that question, Jamie?
My answer to your question is stormwater rules do not apply to a 4-lot subdivision. I'm not saying you can't take it under advisement, but it doesn't apply.
Boyd, you know anything about that? I'm not knowledgeable enough to agree or disagree.
I frankly do not. I think that's correct, but I'm not positive.
Does that? Sure. And I know this isn't the place where we make those things, but is this a discussion that perhaps needs to take place at another time as to whether or not that should be addressed? Not now, Jason. I'm not saying we should get into that now, but would that be typical to have no stormwater regulation on anything that's going to be built?
I don't think that's the case. There will be stormwater oversight once something is underway in terms of building. But there's no infrastructure being installed or anything like that. There's really not a stormwater component until they begin to build a house.
There was a neighbor months and months and months ago that came and was going to speak on this proposed subdivision when signs started going up. Right? Do you remember who that was by any chance? Seems like it was one of these northern neighbors.
He's listed on the staff review. I think it was Carter Hayden.
Carter Payton, yeah. Well, that's the lot receiving the additional property. Garrett, wouldn't it need its reference as well? The deed reference? Or is there a separate plat taking that land on?
Or the land to be transferred?
Yeah. Like all the other adjoining parcels have their references. Wouldn't this one have a reference as well?
Which lot?
It's the lot 4 with the existing house parcel. It's got a 40, I guess that's a tax record, 406 reference. You got a label on, there's this Andrew Bergeron. You've got his reference, part lot 2 and 4, the McDade property with plat book reference. That's a new EPB easement that is shown on this one that isn't shown on the past one. But then that lot 4 with the existing house 406 that Peyton, wouldn't that need a reference as well for the plat?
Are you talking about like note number 2? What type of reference?
What did you actually call your second note?
Where are you seeing the names?
On Gizmo,
And what?
Hamilton County GIS.
Oh, not on the document. I'm looking on the document.
No, I'm trying to switch between them so I can tell what I'm looking at.
Jamie, I think your issues is with staff review, not with the motion. So,
Yeah, I would say that's true.
I mean, you know, I think we could deal with those issues before we get to a meeting, because I mean, you know, I have appreciation for staff review, and I also have appreciation for every signature that goes on a plat, that they're not going to sign a plat with, you know, every plat that I get signed. I mean, signatures are tough to get, really tough to get. And, you know, usually this body is, you know, looking at it from a little higher level and making sure it meets subdivision regulations and the intent of the application and moving on. I mean, I really think that we're in the weeds here. So, I would
Also,
hope
a
we
tip.
call for a question pretty soon.
All right, Tim. Dan, did you have any other discussion, or does any other member have discussion? We have a motion and a second.
So the property owner wanted to speak on this, is that right? And
There was a property owner that came to a meeting and asked to speak. It was probably a year ago. And at that time, there was no application. And so they elected not to. Well, I think they did mention that they were worried about runoff if there was going to be development there. But I think to Dan, any other discussion, or does any other member have discussion? There's our 20-second feedback loop there. Yeah, I mean, pre and post development runoff will be managed by Cliff and Boyd once it's proposed. So I think that would be our answer tonight, is the point I'm trying to get to. That would be the control that we have over that would be it would happen at the construction permitting level.
I do remember this, and I remember him having some, he just lives up the road from me. I haven't had any conversation with him, but he did spend a bunch of money to have some water issues fixed in his house just recently. So something to consider.
Well, that's something Cliff will have to pay close attention to when it comes around for them to review.
But we don't have any opposition that wants to speak on this matter. Okay.
But no notice was required, is that right?
The agenda was posted. I think that's sufficient.
All right, so another moment for discussion. Otherwise, we can move to a vote.
On that last question, the agenda was posted, but it was also put on our website. The packet was on our website, and an email blast was done, in addition to
Yeah, and we talked a little, Sam's asked that we try and get, this stuff out as soon as possible, but that's what talking to, Garrett about the ordinance that we changed just, again, about 12 months ago was that we got 60 days to review and they have to be submitted 15 days prior to a meeting to be on the agenda. That's 45 days. Otherwise it goes straight to council anyway. So it puts us in it's exactly what we're doing. This is the first time we've seen the plat. It finally got, it was 15 days before. By the time that gets submitted and, sent out to the public, the only opportunity for the public is really that one shot for that one agenda that they may only have 3 to 5 days of notice for. So if we need to go back and look at the amount of time for someone to submit or how it passes through, that was a reasonably contentious point that we discussed quite a bit. And so this is the scenario. They met the 15 days. This is the first meeting after. If we don't make a ruling here, well, I guess we would have one extra meeting that we could have prior to it just passing on through to council anyway without planning oversight.
Well, just to be clear, am I correct, Boyd? Final plats don't go to council. This is approved right here. Just so we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
That's correct.
But this is, I will tell you, this is consistent with a lot of other planning commissions, our time frame.
All right. Well, that might have been a reason why there may not have been a response by any dissenting opinion.
It was not that this is a requirement, but it was discussed some on social media, and there had been indication that some people might want to speak, but they chose not to. And we made a way so that they could. So it wasn't for lack of trying to say, hey, does anybody want to speak?
All right. So motion second. Any further discussion? I don't see in y'all's faces any enthusiasm for further discussion. Is it? I can't see very well.
No.
Is there any? Okay. So we all those in favor, right?
Now you gotta do a roll call.
Yep.
Do a roll call.
Dan,
Yes. Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Eddie,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
me. I'm a yes.
Unanimous. All right. Agenda item number 2, we have Wind Tree, Unit 4, 1 through 13. Garrett, please do the honors.
If I can unmute myself real quick. So they sent it, and there were a number of corrections that need to be made. It looks like they addressed all of them except for one, which was to label the right-of-way stem beyond the cul-de-sac of the unopened right-of-way, which I found in the preliminary plat approval conditions from the minutes when the preliminary plat was approved. That's the only one that was not addressed. And my only other concern was that everything was reviewed by Cliff and Loretta for approval as well.
So what about the the right-of-way stem?
In the minutes of where the preliminary plat was approved, it was just a condition of the approval to label the right-of-way stem as an unopened right-of-way, which I did not see that it was on the revised plat that I received.
So is it still your recommendation for approval? Since it meets the conditions?
Pardon?
If it wasn't labeled and that was one of your, you know, you say once the corrections are satisfactorily addressed, that not being addressed, then is your recommendation for approval?
Yes, the recommendation would be approval contingent upon that one being addressed, just because it was condition of the preliminary plat approval previously. That's the only reason why it was included in the reviews, because that's what was condition of the preliminary plat approval.
I understand.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Just, I mean, that's the single stem that leads to, I forget how many other acres.
That's the one at the end of the cul-de-sac that,
An additional 25 acres over there.
this is the one we had a long conversation on about a year ago about it has to have a bridge to cross a creek for it to be built out. Is that right?
Yes. And just while we have the opportunity, Sam just texted me and said, we do have several representatives from the applicant in the waiting room that can join and answer questions if you need.
Before we get to that, I remember us having a lot of discussion about that, that right of way or easement to the property. It had to do with whether a road needed to be built or who was going to build a road or something, or whether we call it a driveway. Do y'all remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the details of it.
Well, it wasn't wide enough to be a road, so it had to be called a driveway. If I remember, that's kind of the gist of it.
Is it wider now? I'm not sure what's required for a road.
I think initially, and they may be able to speak to this better, but it seems like initially that was actually kind of a standalone piece there, and now it's actually part of that larger tract. So it's connected to that parcel and doesn't landlock it, and ultimately nothing could be done with that. It would in fact landlock that parcel.
But am I understanding and remembering correctly, Boyd, that if someone did want to build that parcel out with more than one home, it would not be something that the town would accept as a road because it couldn't meet the specs?
I don't.
Jamie, do you
I
remember
can't
that?
tell from this how wide it is.
I'm looking at the plat. I would imagine the applicant could probably address that, but what I remember was in originally the original plat crossed that creek. There were some issues. The applicant had some issues with it, with the creek as well. This is the revised plat. And that ultimately, I think that was a driveway, and then ultimately somebody could build one house up there in the future if they wanted to. And I think I'm sure the applicant will remember better than we do, but I'm pretty sure that's what we approved when we approved their preliminary plat, was keeping everything on this side of the creek, and then giving them some access if you know, you hate to see all that property go to waste if somebody wants to build one house up there. But I'm sure the applicant could speak to that.
I think that sounds right, Jason. I think I remember it that way too. But
Well, that little leg is shown in the GIS as being, and that's how it's shown in this plat, that's Nancy Mills. And I misunderstood that from the original application. I thought we were trying to decide how to convey or otherwise title that little leg of land such that we didn't landlock Nancy Mills on the side of a stream. But according to Hamilton County GIS, that little 50-foot leg at an angle at that call that they're showing here is already Nancy Mills property.
do you want to bring the applicant in, Jamie? That'd be your call.
I don't think I need them. The questions or the topics that I have is for staff. If any of you guys would like to, is the engineer out there?
Yes, they are.
I would also ask, I mean, and just to make sure for the record, is there any opposition sitting in the waiting room that wants to speak? If they're here, we should hear from them too.
Is there opposition in the waiting room?
No.
I'm unaware of any opposition.
Look, if the applicant's sitting in a room and wants to speak, maybe we ought to give them the opportunity to speak. But if this is a final plat that meets the intentions of the preliminary plat, and Gary, you're saying that you had a laundry list of things that they haven't done. They've submitted an updated plat that meets those requirements. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and one thing I wanted to mention was the only reason I put it in my review and that it should be labeled as a right-of-way stem is that it was a condition of the preliminary plat approval. Once I saw that, I included it in my review and I asked them to take off the remaining acreage of the larger lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's a minor thing. If that's all it is, I mean, this sounds like a pretty easy decision to me.
I mean, there was evidently someone sitting in the room for the other one, and it was minor subdivision we went through. Now this is major, but if there's no opposition, I don't know that we need any more information beyond what staff's reviewed. Are all the stormwater concerns resolved?
I guess I never heard that there was someone sitting to speak on the other one. I would be in favor of always giving the applicant an opportunity to address the body if needed. I apologize. I didn't hear that, or I would have made it available for the applicant. So,
Well,
I mean, maybe they have nothing to say. I'm going to make a motion to approve. They're going to hear that, I guess. But I mean, the applicant may have some questions.
Well, that's fine. The only reason we did that is because, you know, we had that last little daycare, wherever it was, that we all kind of unanimously were in favor of and moving ahead. And there was an urge to speak on behalf of the applicant the whole time. And we were encouraging them just to kind of move it on through because there wasn't other information that we needed to make that decision. If we likewise feel this way, I just wasn't going to obligate any of their or our time. But if they want to speak, I don't have a reluctance to do that.
You're the chair, bro.
Well, I defer to my commission members. If they want to let folks talk, then I'm down for it. But if it's not opposition and we have a motion to approve, I guess we can, according to Dan, start other discussion after, so we still can include them in the meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So now, formal
Jamie,
discussion.
if I may,
Yes, sir, please.
before you go to vote, I just do want to point out that there are some infrastructure improvements that remain. The road isn't paved. And some other things that may require some bonding ahead of them filing this plat. I just want to make sure that that was on the record.
That bonding would be something that's already in our regs that would specify that needed to be done already, right?
Correct. That, the,
So just as a point of clarity for me, I didn't drive out to the site to see that it wasn't done. I just, when Garrett said everything on the list was done, on his list was, I don't have a list in front of me, but it was paving. I mean, the typical stuff like paving and street signs and stop bars and, you know, pouring throats and all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm not taking back my motion. I'm just asking for a point of clarity. We can pass a final plat before those things are done in our subregs?
if they provide bonds, performance bonds for the remaining,
Okay, right.
so they would have to provide an estimate for the cost of the paving, and whatever else there may be. And then if we review that and find it to be reasonable, then they provide a performance bond for 125% of that amount.
Well, if Eddie would accept it, I would make that a condition of the motion just to be on the safe side, that the final plat would be conditioned upon the issuance of acceptable performance bonds.
Agreed.
And given that, Jamie, you asked for input. I'm not a member, but it might not be a bad idea to touch base with the developer on that if they're available.
Well, yeah, let's go ahead and bring them in and wrap up the discussion. We have a motion in a second. We can knock out some questions and move on if everyone's prepared to do so.
Okay, I'll go ahead and bring in the applicants.
Is it Ben and John?
Yes, yes.
You can,
Also have a Craig Buffington in the waiting room with North Point. Is that someone with this project, or was that the previous applicant?
North Point is this one.
Points this.
North, that is this one.
He's a surveyor.
I'll bring him in as well.
Ben and John, are you there?
I'm here. It looks like Ben should be there.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I had it on mute. Hello?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay.
Ben, you can also activate your camera if you have it.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Next to the mute button, there's also one for video. There you go.
There it is.
I'm here. It looks like Ben should be there.
All right, I believe that's everyone.
I'm here. Sorry, I had it on mute. Hello?
Yeah, we got you.
All right, guys. Yeah, so we've had a motion to.
Also activate your camera if you have it.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Yeah, we've had a motion to consider the application, reviewing some of staff's comments, and there were a few other questions. So we're inviting you guys in to allow the commission to finalize the questions that were represented on staff's recommendations for the plat.
Hey, Ben, could you hear what we said before, while you were waiting?
Yes. Yeah, so basically that leg that goes off to Mrs. Mills' property, last meeting, we just said that we were going to label it, that it was part of her property so that she would have access to it, so that the town would never have to, it wouldn't be an unopened right of way that the town would ever have to be forced to put a road in there that they would have to maintain or anything. So we agreed, yeah, we were just going to put a note in this that was going to be labeled as such. And so that was just a obvious minor oversight that we just forgot to put on there because that was a year ago when we had that meeting. So we'll throw it in this final plat for sure.
And what about, it sounds like you want to go ahead and record this final plat prior to paving, so you're good with providing a bond?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. We just wanted to make sure they were fine with any of the changes we had made. And then we were going to go ahead. We just didn't want to put the pavement down and then someone say, well, we would like to see something different or anything changes. It's real cheap to make the changes now, but we want to just go ahead and get the final plat approved here from what we did in preliminary versus now. And then we're going to go ahead and just pave it right away at this point. As soon as we get approval on this thing, we're going to go ahead and pave it. We've already passed all the other everything else that he's asked for on this. So
What they're saying is what the sub regs require is if you want a final plat approval now, before it is paved, before you curb it, before you backfill it, before you put your signs in, all the normal stuff, then you've got to get an estimate of that work, and you've got to issue a performance bond for 125% of that cost.
that's right. And we have an estimate on that. And I've talked with Boyd Bill about that already. So we're prepared to do that. And we'll probably, that way we'll just go ahead and keep everything moving forward. We'll go ahead and just bond it and plat it, and then we'll just pave the road right behind that.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead, Boyd.
in terms of reviewing, we literally just got the built documents and review on those. So we haven't had the opportunity to review those yet either.
Review which documents?
The as-built,
Okay.
I mean, they just came in. So and Garrett can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the requirement is that the final plat can't be recorded unless that bonding is in place. And, that, along with the review of the as-built and everything, we won't sign the plat until all of that is completed. So if the approval is contingent upon those final reviews and bonding or completion of the road, then it would fall to us then to make sure that happens before we sign it. And if we don't sign it, then they can't report it. So.
But there's nothing planning commission related that were questions on the plat, right? I guess that goes to Garrett.
No, I mean, Boyd's right. If the road's not down, it does have to have a performance bond. Boyd's 100% right there. I was under the interpretation that who I spoke with, that everything was completed, everything was moving forward, and you were just moving forward with the final plat approval with no performance bonds being issued.
I mean, as far as we're concerned, where it's zoned, where it's sitting, the density, the intended use for our signature purposes, or Ethan's rather, we don't have any standing non-compliant items to discuss or consider.
Right, outside of the performance bonds if the improvements aren't made.
My only question would be if, and we have, again, the engineer has sent us certification that on the as-built, but we haven't had the opportunity to review that. I would imagine the only issue would be if it's determined that the as-built don't correlate with this final plat, then it would have to be changed.
Well, you wouldn't sign it until you approve the as-built.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so we approve it tonight. We're basically only approving the planning commission secretary signing the plat. And then they still have you, WWTA, TDEC, whoever else to sign. So in your checklist is the as-built. if I could, let me ask a question on Dan's behalf, because Dan, you'll like this question. This is the first time I've dealt with a performance bond on the Signal Mountain Planning Commission. So Ben goes, he gets his bond. It's a two-part question. One, he can start building houses, right? Because he's bonded it. So he didn't have to wait for the road to get paid before he starts building houses. Is that correct?
Correct.
So because he's bonded the road that it's going to be finished. So even if it's gravel or whatever, he can start building houses because he's bonded it's going to be finished. And then is there a sign off process when he's completed the road, everything's finished, signs are in, curbs are in, everything's backfilled, everything's done to release the bond? There's a sign off process with the town that you accept it as a city street?
Yeah, there's kind of a separate process. We once everything's in and we inspected it, we can release the bond. But then the actual acceptance of the road doesn't come, I believe, till like a year later.
Right.
And then they would.
But the mechanism is release. The mechanism is release the bond. It basically says we accept. It's as long as it's in this condition a year from now, we're good.
I don't know that there's anything that specific. It's simply the release of the bond simply says that the infrastructure has been installed. It appears to be as required and complete, and then we release the bond on it.
Who sets the bond value?
It's pretty much set out in the regs that we have to get an estimate. We usually ask the inspector to do that, to get it from the person he's going to use. They get the quote on the work, and then the regs require that the bond be 5%.
With the condition of Wintry as it was, and with some of the public comments that we received when we first saw this plat, is there once construction traffic starts for this segment, is there a plan to resurface the remaining portion of Wintry back out? Was that in the original subdivision of the other Wintry units? So ultimately, once it's fully built, to pave all the way back out to what are we on? Bridgeway or Timberlinks tie back to? That's to Ben.
That question was to me.
Yeah, are we after we've built everything in the back and send all that construction traffic through there with the condition of the road now, was it in the plans to repave it coming out? Because that was some of the comments from the public earlier on in the initial submittal.
No, that's not in the plans.
Boy, some of the problems, if I remember, you guys have addressed with the old culverts that were in Wintry already. Hasn't that already happened?
There has been some work on the storm culverts through there.
If contractor did damage a road, is there liability? And it was provable.
Maybe that's a hairy question, but I think it would have to be something specific as opposed to wear and usage, even with larger vehicles.
I thought all those curves were still sitting up inch and a half all the way through, kind of waiting on their last mix. You know, a lot of times you withhold your final wearing course till you're done constructing.
Well, I'm not going to make Mr. Pepper's argument for him, but I mean, if the town specs were for a road and there was future development and the road was damaged because the town specs didn't meet construction traffic for future development, I'm not sure that's Mr. Pepper's issue. So,
None of the existing roads were built to town specs. They were built when it was in the county.
well, still, I mean, the town took them over. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know why this has the effect of the plat that's in front of us. So, you know, to me, we've got a good developer that's done a good job. We've reviewed this plat a couple of times. He's made dramatic changes to it as a preliminary plat. We reviewed it as a preliminary plat. We discussed it. Now he's gone and built it. So, you know, thanks for bringing all these new lots to the town of Signal Mountain. I don't know why we wouldn't approve this and move on to the next item.
Yeah, I don't, and just to chime in here, Jason, I don't think anybody's talking about not approving it over these things, but this is for the most part, a non-professional planning commission. And this is where we have to ask these questions. It's the only legal place for us to do this.
Fair.
So it's nothing against Ben at all. It's just us doing our due diligence in the only way the law allows us to do it.
That's fair.
So it's a learning experience, and I'm at the back of the room all the time. I think.
All right, motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Jamie? Are we voting?
I'm asking if there's any other discussion
Oh,
just
I'm sorry.
around the room.
I just have to ask if everybody's comfortable approving it without reviewing the construction drawings, without that being approved or with being reviewed really, since that just came in.
I don't know what I mean, there's no typical sections shown on this. I don't know what we'd be reviewing.
Well, the town's review. I guess that'd be Loretta and Cliff's review.
And doesn't that bring it back to Jason's point from the earlier one, is that process happens down the road on each lot?
Not on each lot. They don't, Boyd won't sign the plat. And I'm speaking for Boyd, but he won't sign the plat until he is comfortable with his review and Loretta's review of the as-built drawings. That's the construction. The construction process is not planning commission business. Our business is, does it meet the subdivision regulations? Does it meet the subregs? Boyd and Loretta, it's time, they can get into the weeds about where the stop sign is and how many road signs there are and all of that kind of stuff. And driveway cuts and drainage and all of that kind of stuff. That is for them to review. They're the pros.
Yeah, and this plat actually has, I mean, staff can sign it after they've completed their review, or I guess they can withhold it for construction review for their efforts of contracted with the city's work. But for our benefit, if they had well, I guess they did prepare an agenda saying that their comments were either remaining or listed as such or met. But yeah, I mean, we can sign this from a planning component and it never be signed by the town Mountain.
That is completely correct.
Stormwater could stop it at some point if Cliff found something that was not going to make it work.
Yeah, that would be under signals.
Is that correct to you, Boyd?
Yes. Any issue that we identify, if it can't be corrected without appreciably changing it, then anything of significance or substance could ultimately push it back to the planning commission. But we can require anything to be done necessary before filing, before we sign it.
And Jason amended his motion. That was on this one, right, Jason?
Yes.
You amended your motion?
Yeah, and just, yeah, for the record, I made a motion to approve, and then I had not been to the site. I wasn't aware that it wasn't paved. And when I read the staff report, it had paving and all, and everything related to that on there. And I amended the motion that the applicant provide an acceptable bond.
All right. Well, nobody's overly chatty in regards to that. Do we need a second for the amended motion?
Ethan modified his second.
I had agreed to the second.
No.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So last call, any further discussion from a planning perspective regarding Tree subdivision unit lot 4, or section 4? Whatever it's called. What's it called?
No, sir.
All right. So then we can call for a roll call vote.
Dan,
Approve.
Eddie,
Approved.
Charlie,
Approved.
Jason,
Approve.
Susanna,
Approve.
Jamie.
Approve.
I approve.
All right. There are no additional agenda items. Is there any other business or any members of the public wanting to speak at this time? Anybody aware of anything?
No.
Everybody's chipper on their little computers in their house.
All good.
Yeah, y'all gotta remember, this is a visual thing now. You gotta like start caring about how well you maintain how well it's decorated. Got Jazz is Dead posters and a Derek Trucks album cover back there. It's gotta start thinking about all this stuff. Kind of brighten things up, whiten your teeth.
Which one of you guys can do this? There you go.
Somehow I knew that was going to happen.
Oh my.
I've got Green Day queued up to play if you want me to play that.
Hey, Jamie, can I make one comment before you start playing?
We might want to actually adjourn. Before
Yeah, yes. Can I make one quick comment?
Please.
On a month when we do not have anything to do,
Yes, sir.
can we get Boyd and Garrett and Harry, and I'll be happy to help, and like how a bill becomes a law? I mean, there's we have all these questions during all of these applications. And I'm not talking about zoning. Zoning is a completely different animal, but when it's regard to passing a plat, it is super, super specific, and the law is very, very clear. And Dan, you made a really good comment. You probably saw my eyes rolling and stuff at some point, and you're exactly right. This is a group of people that doesn't know it as well as I do, and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, for somebody that applies for this stuff often through multiple planning commissions, we're asking some crazy questions. I mean, like crazy questions that don't apply to what we're supposed to be deliberating on. And so, and that's not a negative comment. This is a let's learn how to do better comment. So at some point we have nothing to do. Can we just take 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever and say, here's what the plat process is, here's what the review process is, here's what the construction process is, and here's what we should be deliberating on. And I think ultimately it's going to save all of us a lot of time.
May I say something to that, Jason?
I'm done.
I think I agree that those processes that we do that's one element. There's another process of the Planning Commission where it plans and where it talks about does our code meet what we want, and that's part of the planning process, and that's the whole land use plan and Tourette's thing and all that. It just feels like there's never an opportunity to do that, and that's why it pops up at inappropriate times.
I think what you'll find is the state is going to give you some pretty specific guidelines about what you can and cannot look at when it comes to approving or not approving a plat.
Yeah, I'm talking about something separate from that. I agree with you completely. I think this process should be smoother. I agree.
So only on plats. I'm not talking about zoning.
Yeah, the other is when we have that discussion, this goes back to, I think I asked maybe a time or two, it would be really great if there was training for planning commission members.
Yeah, there's definitely an obligation to know what we do, and I'm the world's worst. I talked to Garrett about that. I don't recall regs and processes for each size and scope and scale of development. So I mean, it's a new day for me every day. I don't disagree that we could conduct this business more quickly. However, I do think that if it was in a public forum and we had any dissenting opinions, we'd be getting tons of roadway construction and lifetime maintenance and drainage questions that we'd have to be answering anyway. So us being better prepared to answer those, great idea. I felt like we went on through this one. We could have definitely done it quicker, but it seemed reasonably timed enough, and I like the fact that it's recorded with us at least considering the questions that it's been demonstrated that the public bring to us anyway.
For the record, my comment's not necessarily about time. It's about the process and what we can and can't consider.
Yeah, and I'm great for that. I mean, we could do that anyway, just like every 3 months have a different topic to review as an agenda item. I mean, and that even leads somewhat to what Dan was saying as far as planning, being proactive about what information we want to talk about. I mean, we can expand the agenda. Garrett asked for topics on the agenda, and I guess instead of saying nobody's told me nothing, I guess we could put on there, hey, how about we have a quick refresher on what a minor subdivision is and what things we're responsible for looking at. So the next time one comes around, it'll be in a 12-month memory.
Sure. I mean, I'm more than happy of either coming up with stuff or polling everybody to see what you are interested in learning about, or I can just come up with stuff myself. Or another option is, you may not want to have another meeting, but just a workshop outside of the planning commission meeting is another option.
Those weren't real popular last time. That's an
idea.
But let me ask this though, Garrett, if you guys can provide that, and if that counts toward the training we need to have anyway.
Right. There is the required 4 hours.
It might be killing two birds with one stone and doing it in a way where we aren't talking about mailboxes in Nashville.
That was near and dear to Garrett.
Me too.
Those mailboxes are a real deal.
That's true. I think Jason was interested in that.
All right. Well, good meeting. I say go ahead and throw it on the next agenda. How about minor subdivision? Let's just kind of hit the minimum number of bullets necessary to define it, differentiate it from others, and a quickie focus on what our responsibilities are when they come up.
Good.
Yeah. Excellent point, Mr. Farmer. If nobody has anything else, we can, is there a move to adjourn?
So moved.
Move. Second. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We're adjourned. Thank y'all so much for facilitating.
See you guys. Thank you.